court, draw nigh and you shall be heard. God bless the United States, this state, and this court. Be seated.
All right, good morning, everyone. Before we bring the jury in, let's deal with the issue of when does the state intend to try to introduce this transcript of the defendant's statement? All right. So the reason that I asked that is that Officer Howells informed me that there's someone that needs to do some sort of repair work on the door locks to the courtroom, and they were hoping that it was going to be able to be done this afternoon.
Recording in progress.
So he was asking if we could take a little longer afternoon recess at that point in order to allow that person to do that type of thing. So if you want to address those issues about the transcript and any redactions and additional redactions above and beyond what this first draft was, would this afternoon be sufficient to do that and have it ready for tomorrow?
That's our plan today.
All right. All right, then let's just plan this afternoon when we let the jury have a longer break, we can do that on the record. All right.
When you say this afternoon, you're talking about lunch break?
No, after the afternoon break's what I was thinking. So is that any reason we can't do it that way, or
2:30 break?
2:30 break?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, so we're all on the same page. And in an effort to ensure that the jurors are not in any way exposed to anything, we're talking about alternate means of trying to have them food provided for them. We're going to, I think the last is we're going to try to bring food in here for lunch every day. Is that correct? So that they're not having to go outside and do that. And today, I think they're indicating that they're going to bring in from a restaurant in Dickson at around 12:30.
12:30, 12:45, he'll be here.
So we'll need to take our lunch break around 12:30 to let the jurors get their food. So.
Judge, we think the state will be finished with our proof by closing date tomorrow.
All right, so right now the state's proof you're thinking will be over by the end of today's Wednesday, close of business Wednesday. All right, that'll give the defense an idea, and of course, as we indicated, once we do that, then the defense will have an opportunity, if they choose, to put on any proof, and then from there, we'll let the jury deliberate on these 10 charges, and then once that has been concluded and they've arrived at a verdict, we'll deal with what we need to do regarding counts 11 and 12, which are bifurcated because they involve the convicted felon in possession of a gun. So, all right, then we are ready to bring the jury in. Is there anything else we need to take up before that?
No, Your Honor.
Just as an outline of proof today, what are you intending to prove, to introduce? The reason I'm asking is this: at some point, I'm assuming, based on pretrial motions, that the state intends to play the body cam footage, the video footage. Is that
Judge, the body cams will be played tomorrow.
tomorrow? All right.
There will be some crime scene photos introduced today, and there are a couple that in pretrial orders, Your Honor has identified as needing a hearing, and Mr. Evans and I have discussed it. When we get near those witnesses, we'll inform the court.
All right. Well, the point of that is this. My thought is to give some sort of a warning to the jurors who don't have any idea what is in store for them when they look at the video or look at the photographs, and just to give them some sort of a mild admonition that they need to be prepared for what might be graphic photographs or video or whatever, so that they're not, I think it would just be fair to them to do that. Any objection to me giving them some sort of a little bit of a heads up that they need to prepare themselves for them. All right. Same thing would go for anyone that's in the audience today, and I understand you want to be here for every moment of this. Just understand that if you haven't been exposed to this before, some of this information and some of these photographs and the video can be very disturbing. So just prepare yourself for that. So, all right, then we are ready to bring the jury in. It's interesting how territorial we can sometimes be about trying to find a spot we want to sit in. There are no assigned seats, so if you choose to move around, please feel free to do so. But I also understand when you get a vantage point or a seat that's comfortable, then it's easier to just do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this morning. I hope everything went all right for you last night. You had a good evening. I think they may have told you. If they didn't, I'll let you know that we're going to probably bring food in for you at lunch every day here. Part of that reason is to ensure that that you are not put at an inconvenience in going out to eat somewhere here, and it may take longer to do that than it would be for us to arrange to have food brought in. Plus, it also insulates you from the possibility that anyone might try to talk to you about this case if they see that juror badge. We can't always control what people out there in the general public do, but we want to protect the integrity of this case as much as possible. So, all right, well, we are ready to start our proof again, so the state may call your next witness.
State calls Nathaniel Proctor. Madam Clerk, I need Exhibit 19, which is a large aerial map. That's not it.
That's 15.
Thank you.
Mr. Crouch, is it possible that we could set that more like over here where the jurors can all see it? And that way, it just seems to me that might have the witness then demonstrate, and unless there's some objection, I will likely step down and be able to watch. Sorry.
You had to turn that up for the state's side.
That's fine. And Mr. Evans, if you need to move in any direction over here, whenever this officer starts referring to the map, I will probably step down and you feel free to move over and where you can gain a better vantage point, any of the three of you, okay?
Thank you.
I'm trying to arrange y'all's food. Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give in this case to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Morning.
Will you state your first and last name for the court, please?
Nathaniel Proctor,
Thank you, and spell your last name.
Proctor.
And Mr. Proctor, where are you employed?
I'm assigned to the 23rd Drug Task Force as an Direct-Agt.
Okay. And Agent Proctor, how long have you been employed with the 23rd Judicial Drug Task Force?
This is my 10th year.
10th year. And were you working for the Drug Task Force May 30th of 2018?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember where you were working that morning?
I do.
And where were you?
I was sitting at the 176 where we sit on I-40.
Okay. The 176 mile marker?
Yes, sir. About.
And that's on Interstate I-40?
Yes, sir. In Dickson County.
And just kind of perspective, Interstate 40 runs east and west through Tennessee?
That's correct.
All right. And what happened that morning?
I'm sitting there where we normally park. I pulled up beside my partner. He has two radios in his car and monitors the regular law frequency as well as our frequency. We rolled down the window door to door and we were talking, and he said that he had heard a commotion over the radio and that they were trying to raise Sergeant Baker and they weren't able to raise him.
Okay. Did you go and assist Dickson County Sheriff's Office to look for Sergeant Baker?
I did.
And were you given a certain area to look?
Yes, sir.
And what was that area?
The area Tipple Switch Road and Sam Vineyard is where they had last had him out at.
Okay. And where did you go?
I was en route to that location, and I made it to just about, I don't know, a little bit before that, and they had found his car, and I wasn't familiar with that particular road and where the car was, so I believe it was Deputy Cave gave me directions and told me how to get there via the radio. I just followed his directions.
Okay. Did you go to the Bear Creek Valley area?
Yes, sir.
All right. And when you arrived at the Bear Creek Valley area, what did you do? Did you park or drive into a field or?
Yeah, I pulled up, I believe there was one patrol car in the roadway. Agent Adams and he was behind me. We got out, grabbed our rifles, and we made it to through the fence where the car had driven through the fence. We followed the tracks through the tall grass, and we came up about halfway down. We came up on a marked unit, and we continued over the little rise there, and walked down and found a patrol car up against tree line and fence.
Okay. And can you see this map from your seat?
Yes, sir.
And does this look about like what you saw on that day from an aerial perspective?
Yes, sir.
Bear Creek Valley Road and about where the unit was found?
Yes, sir.
And I'm referring to Exhibit 19. Who was at the vehicle, Unit 500, when you and Agent Adams made it there?
Nobody was at the vehicle
Okay.
at that time.
Was it closed?
It was. The door was locked. I could try to see in the windows. I couldn't really see in the windows. I saw a streak of blood down the rear quarter panel on the driver's side, and not being able to clear the vehicle, I radioed to, at the time, Lieutenant McCliss, I believe, and got permission to bust the window out of the car.
Okay. Oh, why did you feel it was necessary to bust the window out of the car?
Because I couldn't clear the vehicle. Obviously, nobody knew where Sergeant Baker was. Saw the blood on the vehicle, wanted to clear the vehicle.
Okay. And did you receive permission to knock the window out?
I did.
And what happened then?
I took my expandable baton and I knocked the driver's side window out of the car.
Okay. And what did you do after that?
Smoke hit me in the face. Hit the unlock button, fumbled it for a minute, tried to unlock the door. Looked in on the passenger side. I could see his patrol bag sitting in the passenger seat, and then he'd been set on fire. The fire was out at that time, so obviously I cleared the front of the vehicle, and I moved to the back door on the driver's side and opened the door, and his legs and feet come out into my chest, and
What was your reaction when you opened that rear door?
I just, as a father, I thought about his little girl. I watched for rise and fall of his breath. I didn't see it. He'd been set on fire. He was burned underneath his underarm area to his waist. That's what I saw.
Let me back up just a moment. You said when you knocked out the window, you smelled smoke.
I did.
I think you testified it hit you in the face. Is that right?
Yes, the odor. When I busted the window out, the odor.
So there was still smoke in the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
All right. And if I could draw your attention to the screen, well, first, let me ask you may I approach the witness?
You may. Do we need to set that map down so the jurors can see that? I may have created more problems by having you move it than where it was before.
Agent Proctor, can you identify the photo that I just handed you?
Yes, sir. That's
What is that?
Sergeant Baker's car and the broken window.
And is the photo you're holding the same photo we see on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Now, looking at the screen, there's obviously a awning or tent set up over the vehicle. Do you see that?
Yes,
now,
sir.
that obviously was not there when you arrived.
No, sir.
But this is the window that you knocked out?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I'll move that as the next exhibit, please.
This is Exhibit 20.
And Agent Proctor, if you can identify this next photograph. What is the photograph of this handed you?
That's Daniel in the back of the car.
And we can bring that up on the screen. And does the photograph you're holding match what we see on the screen?
Yes, sir.
We'll move that photo as the next exhibit.
Exhibit 21.
And Agent Proctor, I believe you testified that you opened this rear door. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what happened when you opened the door?
His legs and his feet came out of the car.
And that's approximately the position that you found him.
Wait, yes, sir.
Did you have any other assignments that day after discovering Sergeant Baker's body?
Yes, sir.
What was your assignment?
I went back to my patrol car and I notified my family that I was okay and tried to gather myself as best as I could. And TDOC, the Tennessee Department of Correction, had sent a tracking canine out and went out to try to track the suspect.
So you were part of the manhunt?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'll pass the witness.
Questions?
No question.
Thank you, officer. You may sit down. State may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Darren Adams.
Mr. Adams, if you'll step forward, please, raise your right hand and let the clerk place you under oath.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
For the record, Agent Adams, could you please say your full name and spell your last name?
Darren Scott Adams, A-D-A-M-S.
And Agent Adams, let's begin by talking about your background in law enforcement. How long have you been in law enforcement?
For 23 years.
And could you, for the jury, explain where you've worked in law enforcement?
I started my career with the Metropolitan Nashville Airport Police. I then went to Kingston Springs, started their K-9 unit there, started doing interdiction on the interstate there, transferred from there to Fairview, and from there to the Drug Task Force.
And how long, and this is the 23rd Judicial District Drug Task Force, is that
Yes, ma'am,
correct?
it is.
And how long have you been with the Drug Task Force?
Approximately 17 years.
Okay. Do you remember, were you employed with the Drug Task Force on May the 3rd? Could you begin by explaining to the jurors where you started your day that day on shift?
Our primary responsibilities are patrolling and working the interstate systems of federal highways. So I was on Interstate 40 in Dickson County on that day.
Okay. And when you were there, if you would please just explain how your day went from getting on to I-40 there. First of all, do you have a partner that you work with?
Normally the unit, depending on how we're scheduled, we kind of all work together. So on that day, I think I had a full shift. So I had myself, Nathaniel Proctor, Ron Hobson, and Jason Palmatier.
Okay. So while you were on the interstate, did you have some interaction that alarmed you? If you could just tell the jury how your day became atypical.
So on that day, we have an area that we like to sit at. It's right near the I-40 and 840 junction. One of my guys, Nathaniel Proctor, pulled up, and we have our own private frequency, so we don't really monitor because we have 5 counties that we work. So it's very difficult for us to monitor a local channel at the same time. So on that day, one of the assigned guys had heard some commotion, had said something to Nathaniel about they couldn't reach Sergeant Baker on his radio. So Nathaniel pulled up to me and said, hey, they can't find him. I think he had talked with dispatch, and they could tell we were close to one of the locations, and asked if we could go. I said, well, of course. So we activated our emergency equipment, and we started traveling that way. Agent Proctor used to work with the Dickson County Sheriff's Department, so he knows the area better than I did. So he kind of led us into that area. We drove to an area where we were told Sergeant Baker's vehicle was. So myself, Nathaniel Proctor, Agent Proctor, and at the time, Jeff McCliss, he was a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Department at the time. We all got there about the same time. We parked up on the road. You could tell through the field area where a vehicle had driven through. So we retrieved our patrol rifles and we went down to assist. Up until this, I hadn't monitored anything, so our radios are horrible. And so I just figured they couldn't reach him on the radio. Worst case scenario, he had chased somebody down there and fell and hurt himself. I thought we were just gonna go down there, get Daniel, and then just, help him get back to the car. So we go down, and when we get through the field, off to my left was a sheriff's department vehicle. I could hear off to the right some people hollering Daniel's name. We announced our presence. Agent Proctor hollered blue to let them know that it was a friendly coming down. When I looked over to the left, when I saw a patrol car, it looked like the hood had been opened a little bit, maybe it had been in a crash. There's a lot of smoke inside of the vehicle. I couldn't see in the windows. So I told Agent Proctor, I said, let's go over there, because we knew there was other people over on this side. The doors were locked, so I didn't think that anybody had cleared the vehicle yet. So we decided we would clear the vehicle just to make sure, because again, not knowing what had happened that day up at that point, I didn't know that there was a secondary scene, or our primary scene, and this was a secondary. Agent Proctor asked to, on the radio, to get permission to break the window. He hit the driver's side window a couple of times to break the window. I was standing at the front trying to see through the windshield, still couldn't see inside the windshield. So not knowing what was in the vehicle, we decided to clear it. He broke the window, unlocked the driver's door. We opened the front seat of the patrol vehicle, and still at that time I thought it was airbag smoke. Just things were rapidly evolving and we didn't really know. But I also noticed on the front passenger seat was Sergeant Baker's vest and like a duty bag, and it looked burned. So we go to the back doors and we open the back doors, and that's when we saw Daniel, and he was in the back seat. Agent Proctor yelled my name and kind of turned away. I ran to the around the back to the driver's side, because I had been on the passenger side as we cleared it. And instantly the first thing you think is life-saving techniques. Went to grab Daniel, and it was just a lot of trauma, a lot of blood. I went back around just because of the positioning of the body, went back in through the passenger side. The way he was slumped in, I went to pull back on his shoulder to check for a pulse, and that's when I was able to see his head. And I knew then that there was absolutely nothing else that was going to be able to be done. So at that point, I tried to back up, take a breath, and realize that this crime scene might be the only thing that would lead us to his killer. I looked down on the driver's side of the vehicle where Sergeant Baker's body was, and I noticed a body camera wedged in the back seat. I retrieved the body camera. It was hot. Kind of took more of an evaluation of the area. Then I noticed there were burn holes in the back seat, and there were burn holes on Daniel's body and his uniform, where there was a can of oil, a gray bottle of oil, not a can, but a bottle, like a Quicksilver type oil. And because there was burns through his uniform, he had on underwear that had ducks on it that day. I remember that. And I got the body camera, I had it. I went around the vehicle, and the type of uniform we wear is like a BDU with the side pockets. And just, I thought I'd put it in my left pocket, and I guess I missed it, because I constantly went to check that pocket and I didn't feel it. So I dropped the body camera at the time. So myself and Agent Proctor, we got on our hands and knees and covered inch by inch until we found the body camera. And at that point in time, I gave the camera to Lieutenant McCliss so that they could view it so that we can maybe see, hopefully it captured the crime. At that point, I just had everybody back up. Deputy Richlick and Deputy Cave were there. I had them leave because I didn't think they needed to see it. We tried to establish a little bit of a perimeter, and by that time some other people came. The county had brought their dog, Deputy Simmons, and we tried to run a track right off from the very start. So myself, Eggman, Brian Beasley, and Simmons, we ran the first track. That track, it was just not a great situation. That dog was a young dog. We weren't successful on the first track, I don't think. We backed up, had a second dog come out. We ran that track. Then things just evolved from there to where we had various areas of trying to set up a perimeter and just establish and trying to, of course, apprehend the individual that was responsible for doing it. And no luck that day. After a couple of different tracks, I just needed a break, so I just came back and just stayed down at the patrol car where he was at while the TBI processed the scenes. I didn't want to leave him alone.
Now, Agent Adams, I'm going to back up and ask you a couple different questions. One, when you got to Unit 500, did you notice anything on the outside of the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. There was blood on the driver's side rear quarter panel. It went either right to left or left to right, which would explain how the body camera was, probably there. Not knowing what had happened at the time, it looked like that's how the body was positioned up against the car. And then when he opened the back door to dump him in head first, because he was upside down, so his head was in the floorboard and his feet were up.
And you mentioned that you went out and started multiple dog tracks.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you came back. Can you explain a little bit more about your duties when you came back, or what you were doing when you came back to assist holding that scene?
I was just kind of off to the side on that. I didn't, by the end the TBI got in there, they started setting up their whole crime scene to be able to process it. I stayed till the end. I think myself and Jeff Bledsoe and Chad Fuzzle, when we put him on the like a UTV that they have designed to be able to take people out, I walked him up to the road into the ambulance.
And I'm sorry, could you define a little bit more about the pronouns, about who and what, for the jury? Like, when you said that they walked him out to the ATV, could you be a little bit more specific?
We did. So, like, once they had finished processing the body, we took the body, we took Daniel's body from the patrol car to the side-by-side utility vehicle. And then that utility vehicle went from the patrol car up to the main road that was there where that ambulance was parked.
So you were there on that scene from the discovery of Sergeant Baker to when he was removed?
Except for the times that we were taking the tracks out.
Could you describe the conditions that were out there when you were tracking? Was it muddy? Was it dirty?
It was tall grass, really tall grass, which made it tough for the dog to work. Parts of it were muddy. We crossed a creek a couple of times. It was just a rough environment.
Is there anything specific about your uniform today in regards to the search?
Yes, ma'am. So that night, when everything had kind of calmed down, it was about a 20-hour day. I went home My feet were wet. They were bleeding from everything we were doing. I took my boots off at the back door and inside back door of my home, and they have sat there for 3 years. I haven't cleaned them, and I said I wouldn't wear them until today, and I'm wearing them today with the same blood, sweat, tears, and mud.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No question.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. They may call your next witness.
State Constable Jeff McCliss.
Sorry, what was the name again?
Jeff.
Jeff McCliss.
You step right up here, Ed.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We state your first and last name, please,
Jeff McCliss,
and spell your last name.
McCliss, like in Sam.
Thank you. And where are you employed?
I'm currently employed by the 23rd Judicial District Drug Task Force.
Okay. You have a specific assignment there?
I'm currently assigned as a task force officer with the Drug Enforcement Administration, working out of the Nashville District Office.
Thank you. Agent McCliss, where were you employed on May the 30th of 2018?
I was the patrol lieutenant for the Dickson County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. And on the morning of May 30th, 2018, what was your assignment?
I supervised patrol. I kept in touch with the sergeants. The captain and I sort of directed their activities and reviewed their activities. I was also in charge of making sure that they had their equipment, like non-firearm equipment and stuff, but like boots and clothing and things.
Okay. Were in May of 2018, did most or all of the Dickson County Sheriff's Office patrol units have GPS tracking devices?
Yes, all of the vehicles have a GPS that was attached to the vehicle and gave a lot of information about the condition of the vehicle, where it was, and you could use software to plot it on a map and such.
Were you familiar with this software?
Yes, I was probably the primary person that dealt with that software, just because I have a background in computers. So I dealt with a lot of the GPS information and the collection of the GPS information, installation of things like that as well.
Okay.
That was one of my collateral duties.
So we've already heard a lot of testimony about officers responding to different locations within Dickson County in response to a distress call. Did you also respond?
I did.
And where were you that morning when you heard the distress call?
So on that morning, I was actually in bed. It was a day off, and Deputy Chris Lashley was the first one to call me on his cell phone. And if you're familiar with that area down there, it has very poor cellular service. So over the course of a couple minutes, Deputy Lashley and Deputy Steve Richlick were both trying to call me on my cell phone. I spoke to Deputy Lashley first, and he sounded very concerned and upset. He told me that he was on his way to back up Sergeant Daniel Baker at a scene, and he said that he had passed him going in the other direction, and when he got there, the scene just didn't look right.
Okay. Were you asked to find and provide coordinates for Unit 500 and specifically Sergeant Baker?
I was. So immediately after that, I received a call from Deputy Steve Richlick, and I got out of bed and went out to my car. In my car, I have a laptop that's linked into the internet, and I was able to look up the GPS positional sensor that was attached to Daniel Baker's vehicle, and I was able to determine where the vehicle was.
And did you provide a general location or coordinates for responding officers?
I did. I described the location as best I could over the phone and over the radio to the responding deputies, and I also called dispatch and asked and gave dispatch the actual latitude longitude coordinates and asked dispatch to, you know, try, as I was driving at the time, driving as fast as I could.
Sure.
To try and respond. So I wasn't able to manage the computer and my response at the same time. So I asked one of the operators at dispatch to put that information out.
And at some point, did you actually download the coordinates and the tracking of Unit 500?
I did.
And I believe we have a copy of that today, and if I could turn your attention to the screen. If we could dim the lights. Agent McCliss, were you able to see the video?
Yes,
I want to pull the video back up and ask you a couple of questions.
certainly.
There's some stuff, information to take in. First of all, what is this panel over here?
The panel over to the right there shows the speed and latitude longitude of the and the location of the vehicle, the GPS that's attached to the
One
vehicle.
thing I want to note is on the clock in this, it says 7:20:07 a.m. Is that 1 hour off?
It is. It's 1 hour off, depending on what computer you pull it up on. If the time on the computer is wrong, or if the time that it was recorded was wrong, then it will show it defaults to the time of the computer in the reports that are generated.
Okay. And also, Agent, we see asset. Can you see that?
Yes,
And what's the number beside that?
500. That's Sergeant Daniel Baker's unit number.
500 represents Sergeant Baker's vehicle.
It does.
We are seeing and have already seen the route and GPS coordinates for his vehicle.
Yes, the little green arrow there indicates the direction of travel. The red indicates stops. I don't recall the exact amount of time. Yellow would indicate shorter stops. Red can also indicate like things like slamming onto the brakes or sudden directional changes or things like that. They're just pre-programmed in the system to give you that red flash when something noteworthy happens.
Okay. And this time I want you to watch the video and identify like yellows and reds.
Sure. All right, so that would be a pause, a stop with the vehicle still running probably.
Okay. And I see we have Sam Vineyard Road, Dickson County, Tennessee.
Yes,
And again, the time is 7:40, but that would be, the correct time would be 6:40 a.m.
that's correct, yes.
All right. And we have yellow indicator.
Yes.
All right. Continue.
So that's the vehicle going in one direction. The arrow indicates that it reached the end of going in the roughly west there and made an abrupt turn.
Okay.
It's continuing on the path east, northeast, making a right in several events there, probably acceleration and quick stops. And finally coming to rest slightly north.
And this was the final destination and the location where Unit 500 was recovered?
Yes, when I got into my computer and pulled that morning after speaking to Deputies Lashley and Richlick, that's the position that I gave them.
And a note on here, the time is 7:58, but that's actually 6:58.
That's correct.
I'll move a copy of this video as the next exhibit.
All right. Be marked as exhibit.
22.
Just a couple more questions, Agent McCliss. When you arrived and found or were on scene with Unit 500, what was your assignment?
As a patrol lieutenant, I mean, I at that point, my assignment was just to sort of direct the efforts. At a certain point, we thought that when deputies Richlick and Lashley came across the vehicle, we weren't aware that Daniel was still inside. So they saw a portion of grass that looked like it had been laid over, and they went off in that direction. So they went off that way. When agents Adams and Proctor got there, they had requested permission to, they saw that the vehicle was stationary there, and it appeared smoky to them, so they asked for permission to break the windows. And as the person on scene, I gave them permission to break the windows. I said, go ahead and do it. So they did, and that's when they discovered Sergeant Baker.
And in that process, was the body camera recovered?
It was. So when I got on scene, Agent Adams from the 23rd, he had the body camera, or he had it in his possession, and he gave it to me.
And I'm just kind of walking through the chain of custody of the body camera. So Agent Adams had it and provided it to you.
He did. I believe the last image on the body camera is me looking at it and turning it off.
So when you took possession of the body camera, it was still running?
It was still running, and it was actually still warm, like from the fire that was inside the vehicle.
And I was going to ask you, could you tell if the actual camera itself had any exterior fire damage? Or?
Yes, there was a portion of it that had been melted and deformed.
Okay, but you were able to preserve the video.
Yes, yes, they're pretty tough devices.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Any questions? Thank you, officer. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
State may call your next witness.
You want to state with all Captain Mike Eggman?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Morning, Captain.
Good morning.
If you would, state your name and spell your last name for the court, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Mike Eggimann. My last name is spelled Eggmann.
Captain Eggman, who do you work for?
I work for the Dickson County Sheriff's Office.
And what is your current assignment?
Current assignment is captain over training.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
Over 14 years.
Have you always been with the Dickson County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
What roles have you held? What assignments have you held?
I've held assignments, patrol. I've been supervisor on patrol, corporal on both day shift, second shift. Moved over to warrants division, did warrants, also part of the SWAT team for 9 years. Moved from warrants, got promoted to sergeant, was sergeant over warrants. Then I moved over to training division where I am currently stationed.
When did you get moved over to training?
2017.
And so then on May 30th of 2018, you were still over training?
Yes, sir.
What were some of your duties in that assignment?
A lot of my duties were making sure that we met the state requirements, post requirements for training, such as firearms, EVOC, mental illness, officer wellness, and teaching these things and making sure that they're documented for the state.
So let's talk about the documentation as it pertains to firearms.
Yes, sir.
What sort of documentation did you have to keep track of?
Qual sheets, what types of quals we did, and then also submitting that to the state, and weapons logs.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Captain, if you would, can you identify for the jury that particular document?
Yes, sir. This document is our weapons squall sheet. This is from our February firearms in service. This is Sergeant Baker's qual sheet. We did our first qual, which is a basic firearms qualification course, and then we also did a night qualification course. And you have Daniel's or Sergeant Baker's signature on the bottom as well as mine.
Now, in the document, we have 3 different, I guess, courses of fire, correct?
Yes, sir.
Which weapons were used for the first 2?
Sir, the weapon that was used is going to be his issued Glocks Model 17 with the serial number BCVH 783.
Was that signed by the Dickson County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Who was in charge of assigning weapons?
The training division is, sir.
Your Honor, I asked that this qualification sheet be made the next exhibit. May I approach again, Your Honor?
You may.
If you could, identify that document, please.
Yes, sir. This is a segment from our weapons log. It shows the serial number, the weapon type, and the individual who the weapon is assigned to.
And in this case, who is highlighted?
Sergeant Daniel Baker, sir.
And what is the serial number for it?
The serial number is BCVH 783.
And is that the same serial number as was on the qualification sheet?
It is, yes, sir.
Now, when a deputy is assigned a firearm, is that their primary duty weapon?
Yes, sir.
Are they required to carry it?
Yes.
Your Honor, I ask that the clip from the spreadsheet be made the next exhibit.
Mark this next exhibit in order.
And on May 30th of 2018, would Daniel Baker have been carrying that firearm?
Yes, sir, he would have.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Questions? Thank you, officer. You may sit down. State may call your next witness.
State calls Jeff Bledsoe.
Twenty-four is a receipt showing Baker's weapon with serial number.
Do you solemnly swear from that the testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you state your full name for the court, please?
Jeffrey Dean Bledsoe,
And spell your last name?
BLEDSOE.
Thank you. And Mr. Bledsoe, I'm used to calling you Sheriff Bledsoe.
Yes, sir.
You were the sheriff of Dickson County in 2018, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us when you were first elected?
My first term, I was elected in 2010,
Thank you.
and then a second term, 2014, I was in my third term.
You were in your third term and you took another job and didn't run for election, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I retired and took another position.
And what is your current title?
I'm Executive Director for the Tennessee Sheriff's Association.
All right, thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, sir.
Let me call your attention back to May of 2018, a date I'm sure you are very familiar with, May 30th. First, let me ask a couple of questions about Sergeant Daniel Baker. Did you knew him?
Yes, sir.
How long had you been his boss or his chief?
Since I took office September 1st, 2010.
Okay. Did you get to know Sergeant Baker pretty well?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us just briefly what his job description was?
Daniel, or Sergeant Baker, was promoted to sergeant, and his assignment was to supervise the first shift patrol division at the sheriff's office.
Okay. And do you know if Daniel had any law enforcement background before coming on to the sheriff's office, or what his background was?
I knew briefly that he had worked, I believe, in Humphreys County for the sheriff's office, and that he was, that he had a military background with training. He's a veteran with the Marine Corps.
Okay, thank you. So now let's go to May 30th of 2018. Where were you that morning?
I was getting dressed for work when I received the call, so I had to respond from my home.
And Sergeant Baker had been assigned a vehicle, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Each deputy has an assigned vehicle.
All right. And do you remember the unit number for Sergeant Baker?
Yes, sir. Unit 500.
Okay. And did Sergeant Baker also have a badge number?
Yes, sir. Badge 95.
Okay, thank you. And if I could, I'd like to turn your attention to the screen. And Sheriff, first, let me ask you to identify these two photographs.
Okay, the one on the right is, appears to be a picture of a VIN, vehicle identification number, and it matches the VIN for the vehicle that was issued to Sergeant Baker.
So the photographs you're holding in your hand, do they match what we see on the screen?
Yes, sir, they do.
Okay, and let's just talk briefly about those. I'm going to step out of the way. What is this?
That is a title issued by the state of Tennessee through the Department of Revenue, and it's issued for the vehicle that was assigned to Sergeant Baker, Unit 500.
500. And do we have a VIN number here?
Yes, sir.
And does the VIN number on the title here match the VIN number we see in this photograph?
Yes, sir, it does.
And that's the title and VIN number to Unit 500, which was assigned to Sergeant Baker.
Yes, sir, and owned by the Dickson County Sheriff's Office.
Remember those two photographs as collective exhibits, please?
25.
When you arrived at the scene of this incident, Sheriff, did you know what had transpired that morning, or were you just trying to get caught up to speed?
I was notified by my chief deputy, Ron Holt, of lack of contact with Sergeant Baker, that he had responded to a complaint and that we had lost contact with him, and that units arrived on scene and could see blood on the roadway, and that there were casings, spent rounds, or the brass from rounds there also, but he nor the vehicle were at that scene.
Okay. Did you coordinate efforts to locate and track the person responsible for killing Sergeant Baker?
Yes, sir, later as we got the command post set up and we started a perimeter search.
Okay. And is that what you did, was establish a perimeter?
At that point, I knew, I got a second call that informed me of his death, and I rushed to the scene, and from that point, we were beginning to piece it together and start putting out a border or a perimeter for a search grid, and we just had a lot that we needed to learn at that point as we started to work to search.
Okay. Do you know approximately how many agencies, law enforcement agencies, were involved in this search?
It was numerous, General. I'd say maybe upwards to 40 or 50 agencies. It was vast. It was largest involved with.
Okay, thank you. And was the suspect, the defendant, apprehended?
Yes, sir.
And do you know approximately how long it took to apprehend or find the defendant?
It was the morning of the third day following his murder.
Okay. And do you remember the name of the road at which he was apprehended?
Yes, sir.
And what was that?
Stinson Road.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff, can you see this map or this photo?
Yes, sir, I can.
And what does it depict?
It's an aerial shot or a satellite image of overview of a section or portion of Stinson Road.
Okay. And if you would, walk around to the front of the aerial photo. And I was going to bring you a yellow sticker, but I forgot them.
Okay.
So if you would, please just identify the approximate location of where the defendant was apprehended.
Okay, this is Bear Creek that crosses Stinson Road, and it's my understanding it would have been just north of the bridge.
And he was apprehended, you say, on the third day following the incident?
Yes, sir, that morning.
That
And
morning.
It generally would have been in this area just north of the bridge.
Okay. We have Bear Creek, which crosses Stinson Road,
Yes, sir.
and that area is all in Dickson County, Tennessee.
Yes, sir, it is.
I'll move the aerial photo as the next exhibit.
26.
That is exhibit
26.
26, just running through the exhibits to make sure we've got them all correct. The jurors had, one of the jurors had requested clarification on the exhibit numbers. The GPS video of the GPS tracking was exhibit 22. I want to confirm this with the clerk. Exhibit 23 was the qualification sheet from training for Officer Baker. Exhibit 24 was the Officer Baker's weapon assignment sheet. And then Exhibit 25 was the salvage certificate with VNI number, and this would be 26, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're all on the same page.
Sheriff, last thing I want to do is have you identify this map. And I'm going to bring it up on the large screen. The red dots are a little hard to see. If I could direct your attention, is this the Bear Creek Valley area?
Yes, sir, it is.
And that's the location of where Sergeant Baker's patrol unit was recovered?
It is, yes, sir.
And his body.
Yes.
And in the center, we have a red dot on the bridge and creek, and it says arrest location, is that correct?
That's correct.
And on the far left side, incident location?
That's correct.
And what, do you remember the name of the two roads that intersect there?
Sam Vineyard Road intersects with Tidwell Switch at that point.
So we have from left to right, Sam Vineyard Road and Tidwell Switch,
Yes,
moving to the arrest location at Stinson Road and Bear Creek,
yes,
and Bear Creek Valley where the body and vehicle were recovered.
yes, sir.
So is the arrest location approximately halfway in between the two other locations?
Yes, sir, it is.
I'll have that marked as exhibit 27.
There's exhibit 27.
I'll pass the witness.
Thank you. I want to call you sheriff too. Thank you, Mr. Bledsoe. You may step down.
Thank you.
You may call your next witness.
State call Steve Kennard.
Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give in this case be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you state your full name, please?
Stephen Kennard,
Thank you. And where are you employed?
Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
And what is your position with the TBI?
I'm a special agent with the TBI.
Thank you. How long have you been employed there?
Approximately 12 years.
12 years. And what are your general assignments?
I'm assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division unit. Generally, we investigate pretty much everything. Can be anything from homicides to officer-involved shootings to frauds.
Thank you.
Wide variety.
on May the 30th of 2018, what was your assignment?
I was assigned to CID unit to respond to a shooting in Dickson County.
Okay, and did you do so?
I did.
Do you remember approximately what time you arrived?
I arrived at approximately 9:50 a.m. that morning.
Thank you. And which location did you go to?
I responded to the intersection of Sam Vineyard Road and Tidwell Switch Road.
Thank you. And when you arrived at Sam Vineyard and Tidwell Switch Road, what did you do?
Upon arrival, I was the first TBI agent on the scene. Upon my arrival, I spoke with there were 3 Dickson County deputies, personnel there, a supervisor or 2 detectives and a deputy. Spoke with them and got a brief synopsis of the situation and how that particular scene factored into the situation.
Okay. What was your next step?
After speaking with them, I walked through the scene, took a walk through the scene. Upon my arrival, it was had already been cordoned off with police tape at all sides of the intersection. And after that, after speaking with them, I walked through the scene and observed the scene itself.
Okay. And did you process the scene for evidence?
I did.
And when we talk about processing the scene, what does that mean?
Identifying items of evidence, photographing the scene as it is, determining what is of value, collecting those items, packaging, sealing, taking measurements of the items in the scene.
Okay. And just so we're all on the same page, this particular location that you testified to, Sam Vineyard Road and Tidwell Switch Road, was the location at which the Saturn vehicle was recovered?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go into the crime scene processing in just a moment. Did you create a crime scene diagram?
A crime scene diagram was created, yes.
Okay. And what is reflected in a crime scene diagram?
Within the diagram would be basically an overhead view of the scene itself, and then within that diagram will be markings of where the evidence is placed, what is in that scene, and measurements of those where those items exist.
Okay. Can you identify this?
Yes, this is the crime scene diagram for that scene.
And does the diagram you're holding reflect what we see on the screen here?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and I doubt that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury will be able to read this, so, Your Honor, with your permission, we've made copies of the diagram. Okay, Agent Kennard, just briefly, I want to point to number 1. What is this?
Number 1 is a magazine, a handgun magazine that is on top of a vehicle.
I'm not going to go through this whole diagram right now. I just want to get oriented with what the numbers mean. And,
Okay.
And what we're seeing down here. So you put a number 1 here, and we can see what that means, this chart below.
That's correct.
So before we go through this, I want to walk through some of the photographs of this particular scene.
Okay.
And Agent, can you identify this photograph?
This is a photograph looking south on Tidwell Switch Road down towards the intersection.
And does the photograph I hand you match what's on the screen?
Yes, it does.
And what type of vehicle do we see there?
That is a Saturn vehicle.
Okay. I'll move that photo as the next evidence. Next exhibit, please.
Exhibit 28.
And Agent, can you identify this photograph?
Yes, sir. That's a closer up view of that same vehicle at that same intersection.
Move that as the next exhibit.
29.
Agent, can you identify that photograph?
Yes, that's an even closer view of that same vehicle at the intersection and the ground just to the side of the driver's side of the vehicle.
Move that as Exhibit 30. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a spent cartridge case that was on the ground beside the vehicle.
Move that as Exhibit 31. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a vehicle of a picture of the same vehicle from the driver's side.
Move that as Exhibit 32. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a picture of another spent cartridge case on the ground beside the vehicle.
Move as Exhibit 33. Please identify this photograph.
This is a photograph of the back of the rear of the vehicle on the passenger side, and we're now on San Benio Road looking north on Tibble Switch.
And before I move that as an exhibit, can you describe the rear passenger side tire?
It appears to be flat.
Move that as Exhibit 34. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a picture of the interior of the same vehicle on the passenger side.
Move that as Exhibit 35. Can you identify this?
Again, another photograph of the interior of the vehicle from the passenger side pointed towards the dash.
Move as Exhibit 36.
Yes, sir.
Can you identify this?
This is a photograph of from the passenger side of the same vehicle facing to the rear of the vehicle.
And Agent, can you give a description of the passenger side window? Is it up, down, or what?
It's partially down.
Partially down. Move that as Exhibit 37. Please identify this photograph.
This is a photograph of the top of the vehicle, the same vehicle, the two items that were on the vehicle upon my arrival, one being a a magazine for a pistol, and the other being a digital scale.
Move that as Exhibit 38. Can you identify this photograph?
Yes, this is a photograph looking west down, west down San Benio Road, and in it is to the extreme right is the rear of the same Saturn vehicle.
I'll move that as Exhibit 39.
Yes, sir.
And Judge, if we could have a jury out before I proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, from time to time, I have to take up matters that are going to be necessarily considered outside your presence. So if you will exit with the bailiff, then you go ahead and take those matters up before you come back. Is the crime scene, I think it was, did we make the crime scene? Was the crime scene
Judge, I haven't moved it yet.
All right, you haven't made an exhibit yet, right? Okay. Right.
Judge, I want to just briefly let the defense and Your Honor review the upcoming photographs to make sure there's no photograph that has been previously excluded and no renewed objections to them. So,
I have made a specific ruling on each of the photographs, of the crime scene photographs in a prior order and identified them by number. So let's make sure the photographs that you have that you're going to introduce are the ones that have been approved for entry. Ms. Miranda, may I see you for a second? While the defense is looking at the photographs, let me just tell you that I was handed a question by the jurors. It said, what is the distance between these, it actually said, what is the distance between these distance? Incident / body / arrest. General area is how many square miles? That was handed to me, I think, they didn't hand it to the bailiff until after they had exited, the witness had exited, there was testifying about that. And for that reason, I'm not inclined to answer that question, but if I'll inform the jury that while that witness has been dismissed, that the issue may be resolved by other testimony. So, all right. Then are we ready to?
I want to make sure these are still in the correct.
Correct. Agent Kennard, last I saw you, you testified halfway through Daniel's case and then had to leave to go to Nashville.
Yes, sir.
I saw that case was resolved as well.
Yes, it was.
You must have done a good job testifying to get it resolved.
I appreciate that.
All right, we have everything. Is there a need to,
Sir?
I was going to say, is there a need to run through these before the jury comes in, or you have them all in order? All right. Yeah, are we ready for the jury? All right, we're ready to bring the jury in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain one or two things to you. First of all, I was handed a question by one of you that indicated what is the distance from between these incident, body, and arrest location on the diagram or the aerial photograph we talked about in the general areas, how many square miles. Just would remind you that that question, any question that you're asking, you're free to ask anything that you think is relevant. Must be submitted to the bailiff to be submitted to me while the witness remains on the stand. We're moving pretty quickly through these witnesses, so if you have a question, be sure to get it to the bailiff as quickly as possible so that we can, and I'll try to pause before I release the witness to make sure we don't have a question to ask. But the information that you've asked, I've confirmed with the state that can be covered by a different witness so that that information may be able to be brought out. All right, and then I have another question that I'll need to take up outside of your presence to make sure that we'll come to it in just a moment. Now, also, let me explain to you this. Part of my job is to make sure that certain information comes to you that is relevant, that helps you in your decision, but is not what we might call inflammatory or prejudicial. There are some things that are so offensive that it tends to shock the conscience and tends to make people decide things not on the truth of the matter, but on the emotion of the matter. And unfortunately, we have to make these decisions based on the facts and the evidence, not on raw emotion. And this case, as you have seen, is one that generates a lot of emotion. So I have taken responsibility, and I've made certain rulings regarding the admission of some photographs of the crime scene. The photographs that I'm allowing you to see are the ones that I think are permissible, that demonstrate the situation and the facts without being unduly prejudicial. So understand that that is my responsibility, and I've made that decision. So some of these photographs that you'll see may be slightly gruesome, and more than slightly gruesome. It is not intended to offend you or to shock you, but I would prepare you that some of this information that you're about to see may contain information that you would not necessarily want to see, but you are required to see to do your job. So I apologize for taking the time to explain that to you, but I wanted to make sure and prepare you a little bit for some of this. All right, the state may continue.
Your Honor, may I stand next to Agent Kennard?
You can
so I
stand
be-
next to him,
I'm
sir.
blocking the view.
Oh, you're going to put these on the screen as well for the, all right. Yes, that's fine. You can stand next to the witness without having to ask again. So.
If we could dim the lights, please. Agent Kennard, can you identify this photograph?
Yes, this is the roadway, Sand Vineyard, looking west.
And do we see some type of crime scene tape,
Yes.
and what's next to the crime scene tape?
In this particular picture, there looks to be a key card ID next to one of them.
I'll move that as the next exhibit. Can you identify this photograph?
Yes, this is a closer up picture of that same card.
did you know what this card was when it was collected?
No, sir.
Move this as Exhibit 41. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a closer-up video, picture or photograph of that same roadway. On the right side of the picture is a piece of tied-up crime scene tape. Next to it is a blue button.
And you collected the blue button as evidence?
Yes.
Move that as Exhibit 42. Please identify this photograph.
This is a photograph of that same roadway looking slightly further down the road.
All right. Move this is Exhibit 43. Identify this photograph.
This photograph is a picture from the opposite direction, same road, same vineyard, again looking east towards Tibble Switch, towards the intersection.
Move that as Exhibit 44. Please identify this photograph.
This is a photograph of the gray Saturn at the intersection of the two streets. At this point, I have put evidence markers next to the items of evidence.
Move that as Exhibit 45. And Agent Kennard, we're starting to see some crime scene markers with numbers on them, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you place those markers?
I did.
Some of the items have previously been marked and appeared with just some yellow strips of crime scene tape. Was that just temporary markers?
Correct. Those were marked by the deputies that were on scene prior to our arrival.
Thank you. All right, can you identify this photograph?
This is a photograph of the items on top of the Saturn vehicle, marked 1 and 2.
Move that as Exhibit 46. Identify this photograph, please.
This is a photograph of the rear of the vehicle. The number 3 is indicating that the vehicle itself is item number 3.
Move that as Exhibit 47. Please identify this photograph.
This photograph is of the VIN number on the front, inside the front windshield of the same vehicle.
Move that as Exhibit 48. Can you identify this photograph?
This photograph is of a spent cartridge case on the ground next to the vehicle.
Move as Exhibit 49. Identify this photograph.
This photograph is a photograph of the second cartridge case, also located next to the vehicle on the ground, spent.
Move as Exhibit 50. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a photograph of that same cartridge case, just a closer up view.
And from this photograph, are you able to see the caliber cartridge case?
Yes,
And what is that?
45.45,
.45.
.45 auto.
Move that as Exhibit 51. Please identify this photograph.
This photograph is looking west on Sam Vineyard Road, and you can see in the distance the items of evidence that have been marked again with our evidence markers.
Move that as Exhibit 52. Can you identify this photograph?
This is just a closer up video photograph of that same view, just a little bit further down the road.
Move that as Exhibit 53. And Agent Kennard, looking at this, what has been marked as Exhibit 53, you're placing these markers anywhere where you believe there is evidentiary items?
That's correct.
All right. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a close-up photograph after it's been marked with an evidence marker of that same card.
Move that as the next exhibit. Is that 54?
Next one's 54.
54. Please identify this photograph.
This is a closer-up picture of the roadway on Sam Vineyard with evidence markers 7 and 8 having been placed. Item number 7 is to denote the blue button, and item number 8 is to denote the reddish-brown stain, which is what we will call it, something consistent with that of blood. We will describe it before we know that that's what it is, as a reddish-brown stain.
Move that as exhibit 58.
55.
Wow, I'm way off there. 55. And can you identify this photograph?
This is a photograph on that same roadway, Sam Vineyard, close-up picture of items number 9 and 10, 9 being a black latex glove, and number 10, again, was more of the RBS on the roadway.
Move that as Exhibit 56. Agent, please identify this photograph.
This photograph shows the same roadway, Sam Vineyard, with items number 10, 11, 12, and 13. And the one that I can identify right off is item number 10, appears to be denoting the reddish brown stain on the roadway.
Move as Exhibit 57. Please identify this.
And this is item, or marker number 11 on Sam Vineyard Road, with the denoting the reddish brown stain.
Move as Exhibit 58. Identify this photograph.
Again, on the same road, item number 12, again denoting what appears to be a reddish brown stain on the roadway.
Move as Exhibit 59. Please identify this.
On the same roadway, item number 13, or marker number 13, denoting more of the reddish brown stain.
Move as Exhibit 60. Please identify this photograph.
The same roadway, item number 14, denoting more reddish brown stain on the roadway.
Move as Exhibit 61. Can you identify this?
This is a photograph of the side of the road, which would have been the north side of Sam Vineyard roadway, that same roadway. Marker number 16 denoting a piece of black plastic that we found in the grass.
Move as Exhibit 62. I'm gonna wait for her to get caught up for just a second. All right, can you identify this photograph?
Yes, this is a photograph of Sam Vineyard looking west with item number, or marker number 18, and appears 20 as well in the picture.
Move as Exhibit 63. Is that right? And identify this photograph.
This is a closer up view of marker number 18, denoting the piece of the sunglasses.
Move that as Exhibit 64. Please identify this photograph.
This is a closer up picture, photograph of the Saturn vehicle that was in the roadway at the intersection, and this is the back rear passenger side tire.
Move that as Exhibit 65. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a photograph of partially down the road on Sam Vineyard Road with the item number 26 just off to the north of the roadway in the grass.
And Agent, what is this?
That is a larger pool of the reddish brown stain.
And I know we can't see the detail in this photograph, but what do you have marked as Exhibit 26?
There is a spent cartridge case.
A spent cartridge case near this RBS.
That's correct.
Move that as the next exhibit.
66.
Please identify this.
And this is a close-up video photograph of that same item marker number 26, and you can see in there the spent cartridge case, which appears to have been pushed down into the grass or into the dirt.
Move as Exhibit 67. Can you identify this photograph?
This is a photograph of back near the intersection of Sam Vineyard and Tibble Switch, just to the, what would I guess be the northwest side of the roadway, item marker number 27.
Move that as Exhibit 68. And last photograph.
And this is a close-up of that item, marker number 27, and you can see turned upside down, that's another spent cartridge case.
And I'll move that as Exhibit 69. Okay, Agent, thanks for going through that process with us, and you still have your crime scene identification chart
Yes, I do.
and diagram, and if we could pull that up on the screen. Agent Kennard, just to briefly kind of go through this, is this the vehicle, the Saturn?
Yes, the rectangle, yes.
And I want to go this way in the diagram.
Yes, sir.
What are these exhibit markers, 27, 5, 6, and 26?
20 is a cigarette butt. Number 5 is RBS stain on the roadway. What were the
When
other
you
ones? I'm
refer to
sorry.
RBS, what do you say?
Reddish brown stain. I apologize. What were the other numbers? I apologize.
7 or 17?
17 is a piece of broken sunglasses.
Broken sunglasses. And is that, next to the 17, is that your 5 or 15?
I'm sorry, it's a 15.
And what is 15?
It's denoting a reddish brown stain.
Okay. And also, 16
16 is a piece of sunglasses.
and 26.
And 26 is the spent shell cartridge case.
Can you give an approximate distance, just from your memory, of the distance from this shell casing to this RBS pool in here?
Approximately 5 feet.
Somewhat near?
Somewhat near, yes.
And what was the approximate distance from this shell casing to the vehicle?
Approximately 25, 30 feet.
And Agent Kennard, how were you able to find the shell casings that are located in the grass?
We used a metal detector.
Okay. And I'm going to move your crime scene diagram as the next exhibit, which I believe is 70.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Agent Kennard, you physically collected a lot of these exhibits.
Yes, sir.
And sealed them and took them to the TBI crime lab?
That's correct.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
And Agent Kennard, I'm not going to ask you to open
Okay.
the evidence bags, but identify each of them as we move them into evidence.
This is item number 5, spent cartridge case located at the scene, intersection of Typical Switch and Sam Vineyard.
And Agent Kennard, as we're doing this, when you say item number 5, will that be the same as your marker number 5?
That's correct.
All right, so if they're following along with their diagram, when you say item 5, they will actually be able to see item 5 on the map and where it was collected?
That's correct.
Move item 5 as the next exhibit, which is 71.
Yes, sir.
Can you identify this, please?
This is item number 27, the spent cartridge case at the intersection of Typical Switch and Sam Vineyard.
Move as exhibit 72.
This is item number 26, the spent cartridge case, excuse me, on the side of Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 73.
This is item number 4, spent cartridge case located at the intersection of Typical Switch and Sam Vineyard.
Move as exhibit 74.
This is item number 14, and this is a swab of the reddish brown stain from the roadway on Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 75.
This is item number 10, again, a swab of the reddish brown stain from Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 76.
This is item number 11, also a swab of RBS, or reddish brown stain from Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 77.
This is item number 8, again, a swab of the reddish brown stain from Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 78.
This is item number 12, a swab of reddish brown stain from Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 79.
This is item number 18. This is the sunglasses lens, or the lens from the sunglasses that was located on Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as exhibit 80.
This is item number 16, also a piece of the sunglasses located on Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as Exhibit 81.
This is item number 7, the button that was located on Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as Exhibit 82.
This is item number 6, the door ID access card located on Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as Exhibit 83.
This is item number 15. It is a swab of the reddish brown stain from the larger pooling of it on just at the side of Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as Exhibit 84.
This is item number 13. It is a swab of reddish brown stain from Sam Vineyard Road.
Move as Exhibit 85.
This is item number 1. This is the pistol magazine with the live rounds that was on top of the vehicle at the intersection, the Saturn vehicle.
Move as Exhibit 86.
This is item number 17, the broken sunglasses that were located on Sam Vineyard Railway.
Move as Exhibit 87.
And this is item number 2, the digital scale that was located on top of the vehicle, the Saturn vehicle at the intersection.
Move that as Exhibit 88. I don't know if I could have just a moment.
So looking at your chart, exactly how many cartridge cases were recovered?
I believe there were a total of 4 at that time.
Thanks, Ron. Morning.
Morning, sir.
Just have a few questions for you.
Yes, sir.
So as I understand it, your job is you make the scene and start processing evidence, is that correct?
That was my, job at that day, on that day.
And about approximately what time was it when you said you actually got to Tittle Switch in Sam Vineyard?
About 9:50 a.m.
9:50 a.m. And by the time you got there, was evidence tape already up around the scene?
Yes.
And did you greet someone who was keeping an evidence log at the time?
Not an evidence
Or
log.
excuse me, a scene log?
A scene log. One of the deputies there had a scene log, yes.
Okay. When you're talking about the placement of different items, like around the roadway,
Yes, sir.
you're noting how they were as you found them, correct?
That's correct.
And you can't speak to where shell casings or anything else may have been placed prior to your arrival, correct?
That's correct. And as you see them out on my diagram is as I found them when I arrived.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
All right. Need a redirect? All right, before you leave, this would be a good time for our morning break, but if you will bear with me, let's let the jury go ahead. I have one question I want to address on the record. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our mid-morning recess, so it'll probably be about 15 minutes if you want to step across the hall. Well, the reason I wanted to have the witness remain is there were two questions that were handed to me during his testimony. One was, how many cartridge cases were found altogether? I didn't see any basis for objecting to that, and thought it was just simpler for me to ask the question. So I asked that question for that reason. Secondly, the question that was asked, would the interior door handle on the driver door open the door? That was a question by one of the jurors. I don't know, did you do any checking on the vehicle itself to determine whether or not that door could be or could not be open?
Not from the inside, no, sir.
And so I don't know, he would not be a competent person to answer that
We
question.
got additional witnesses for both of those questions.
All right, then we will allow, I'll explain to the jury when we return from our break that those questions will be addressed in future testimony. Anything then before we need to take a rest? So we're going to finish with Agent Kennard and let him go to his next trial wherever he has to be to testify. So I only say that because he was a witness, for those of you who were not involved in our Daniels case. We had him testify on direct, and then he was summoned to appear in Nashville in front of Judge Monty Watkins, I think it was, on the Delphi case. And they were waiting on him, so we let him go with the understanding that he might or might not have to be recalled. He was never recalled, and that caused some question, I think, by some people. But anyway, thank you for your cooperation. We'll release you, so.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, we'll stand at recess for 15 minutes.